We also did a survey of social media users, and we asked them how much time they spend on a bunch of social media platforms, including Facebook and Twitter and X. And we found that the more time that users spent on these platforms, TikTok included, obviously, but these other platforms also, the more positively they rated China's human rights record. And they also rated China as a more favorable travel destination. So clearly there's something going on. Either people are just misinformed, they just don't know, or there's something that they're seeing on these platforms that is encouraging them to think more positively about China.
Right.
It's successful propaganda.
Well, I think that the seeing China as a more favorable travel destination is actually really meaningful here, because what we're saying is it's not just about TikTok and YouTube promoting pro-CCP or neutral content. It's that it's actually driving people's behavior, right? So they're successful. They're successful in manipulating. If they're manipulating the algorithm, and then people are changing their views based on how much time they're spending on that platform, then you're essentially, the Communist Party or these companies are successfully manipulating people's behavior through their algorithmic shenanigans.
Yeah, for sure. There's not, we try to be careful in research to, not equate correlation with causation. This is a very common thing you'll hear among researchers. Just because there's a correlation doesn't mean there's a cause and effect relationship going on. So getting behavioral information from attitudinal data, for example, they're not always synonymous. They don't always translate, but it's not unreasonable to think that, we have as close to behavioral data as we can get with this survey. Like, if people want to go to China as a tourist, maybe they will one day, and maybe, that clearly they were affected somehow by what they were seeing online. So
I guess my big question is, it's clear to me why this would be happening with TikTok, since TikTok is essentially a weapon designed by the Chinese Communist Party to target Americans. But why would Instagram, and in particular, because this affects us, YouTube, be doing this? Like, if you do a search for China content on YouTube, our channel is buried under at least 100 videos that are pro or neutral-ish about China, these travel vlogs and whatnot.
Well, it's interesting. We weren't necessarily expecting to find this result. We were looking specifically at TikTok, because that was the hypothesis, that TikTok would have more pro-CCP and less anti-CCP content. But then, we find this result that YouTube also has this, to a lesser extent, but it's still there. And so, there could be any number of reasons why that's happening. Clearly, the US has some kind of relationship with China, whether that's happening on a company level, if any number, it could be any number of things. You did mention in your video from 2 days ago, about, Google and their partnership with China and kind of what could be happening there. Clearly there's something. I don't know if it's maybe a direct effect, like maybe it's not the CCP directly telling them what to do, but it could be just they want to be on good terms with them, that kind of thing.
I think, obviously as a researcher, you can't really say, like, your report is just about what you found and not like what the reasons behind it might be. But what I found interesting from reading your report is that you guys were obviously trying to anticipate, you were anticipating a possible anti-CCP bias in the American social media. You were like, okay, well, what happens if how would we be able to see if there is some kind of anti-CCP bias in the content produced by American social media versus a possible pro-CCP bias done by TikTok. So it seemed like there was a surprise factor in finding actually there's some evidence of the anti-CCP bias in American social media companies.
Right. Yeah, it was surprising to get these results back. Yeah, I mean, really with this, I mean, we can hypothesize what we expect to find, but ultimately the data is pretty clear by itself.
There's something interesting also in your study when you were talking about TikTok presenting not necessarily pro-CCP content to viewers, but flooding viewers with irrelevant content. Or could you talk a little bit about that?
So we had multiple hypotheses regarding what could possibly be happening. We had something called the distraction hypothesis, which is just one potential method of suppressing critical narratives of China or of the CCP. And this has been found and studied by previous researchers, King especially, and he cited multiple times in our report. Basically the strategy is to obscure sensitive topics, making it more difficult for users to encounter critical or content that's critical of the CCP. A lot of these would be entertainment or lifestyle content, and then maybe apolitical representations. Like when we looked up Tiananmen, a lot of results came up. Well, maybe not a lot, but a few results at least came up about some mountains nearby that are not, related to Tiananmen Square. So things like that, history or geography or culture. And we obviously already talked about the travel vlogs and, these frontier bloggers that are kind of pushing a lot of their content to try to hide other content, specifically content that could be criticizing what the CCP is doing or the Chinese government at large.
Now,
I was going to say, so it's kind of more insidious in a way because it's not like you would be able to identify it as easily if you were, it's not necessarily like there's a TikTok video from Chinese state-run media that's talking about how the Tiananmen Square massacre was a lie, right? It's
totally independent vloggers who...
Or something that's not about Tiananmen Square at all. And it's here's I mean, this is not an actual video. I'm making this up, but a time lapse of the Forbidden City, that would include Tiananmen Square or something like that. So it's just, like you said, distraction.
Right. Yeah. The distraction hypothesis.
Now, as I understand, when you published a preliminary report in August, there was a lot of pushback. Why was that?
The pushback came from, so the CCP basically denounced us and said that
congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's been great. It's a highlight of our careers. Basically, they said that it's pseudoscience and it's not peer reviewed and, it's all nonsense and don't believe a word that they're saying and whatever. So now we, got it through peer review. It's going to be published pretty soon in a journal, in an actual academic journal. So, we took them up on their challenge. And so now what?
I wonder what they'll say now. Yeah.
Are you a curious person? Of course you are. We're now putting full interviews only on our new China Uncensored premium website, ChinaUncensored.tv. Your subscription helps support the show and gives you access to tons of amazing content. Click the link below to check it out.